Let's get another angle on the pandemic now and catch up with the Liberal Senator for South Australia, Alex Antic. He's now in medical quarantine in his home state after returning from parliamentary sittings in Canberra because, Senator, you won't tell South Australia whether or not you're vaccinated. Presumably, you're not vaccinated.
Well, it's your summary, Chris, but I've been very consistent and very clear about my point on medical information. It's private. It's a solemn compact between people's family and their doctor, and I stand by it.
Yeah, I understand that principle, obviously, but when you're dealing with the public health issue and when infections can be passed on to other people, is it not fair enough for governments to demand people to show their vaccination status? Because it's not just about your rights, it's about the rights of others.
Well, look, no, I don't think it is, and I'll tell you why. There's a common misconception out there about the transmission of the virus when people are vaccinated. And, of course, we know that people shed the virus and they transmit the virus when they are fully vaccinated with their 2 shots or their 3 shots or whatever it is. So the logic of mandates and the logic of vaccine passports has never really been clear to me outside the scope of anything other than coercion. And that's what we're seeing here. This has been as much about public health as it has been about coercion. And that's the world I find myself in this evening, Chris.
Yeah, well, the coercion angle, I think I agree with you, is ridiculous because when you have 90% vaccination rates, you don't need the coercion, apart from whether or not governments should use those powers anyway. But the second point, and the medical point, is about the extent to which vaccinated people spread the virus. We know they can get infected. We know they can pass the infection on. But all the medical advice is that it's accentuated when you're unvaccinated, that the unvaccinated are likely to spread it more easily.
Well, look, I'm not a doctor, Chris, but my understanding is that it's less conclusive than that it's actually what they call observational data, and that's it. But I'm not a doctor. I don't know. What I do know, though, is that public health is important. But the extinguishment of personal freedoms, individual freedoms and liberties has to be considered and must not be thrown out with a baby like a baby with the bathwater. I mean, at the moment, we are doing things in this country that I never thought we would do. And as you say, most of us would agree, I think, that the response has been excellent. People have got to 80% now, 90%, largely without mandates. We were never told that the exercise was going to be rounding up stragglers at the end. After all, I mean, the slogan was "We're all in this together," not "We're all in this together unless you don't comply." So, I think we need to be very, very careful with how we push on with mandates. I think they're very dangerous.
Well, as someone who's done 2 weeks quarantine after coming back from overseas last year, I admire what you're sacrificing for principle here, because it is no fun being locked up in a room on your own for 2 weeks. But the other thing you've done on this principle, though, is withheld your vote from certain issues in the Senate over the past couple of weeks. And that's meant, for instance, that the voter identification legislation has gone nowhere. I just want to show you what your Senate colleague from South Australia, Simon Birmingham, has had to say about that.
The Prime Minister and the government have been very clear that we're not going to be dictated to in terms of changing positions around vaccinations or the like. We've held our position, and the actions of those 2 senators achieved nothing during this fortnight other than to frustrate reforms in things like voting integrity, voter ID, litigation funding reform, and that was disappointing.
Yeah, Senator Antic, your response to that, the damage you've done on those causes?
So I utterly reject that. I mean, that's just not factually accurate. I mean, many of those bills that Senator Birmingham referred to there were dubious in the eyes of the crossbench. And you've got to remember, One Nation took the same position. So I think it's a bit cute to dump that on myself and Senator Gerard Rennick, just simply because we take a stand on principle. This is a massive issue around there. I'm not sure politics has understood how big this issue is and how serious it is for people that are losing jobs, that are being forced into a corner, being forced into taking medical treatments they don't want. These are dangerous times for Australia, and they call for serious measures.
Well, it is going to be an interesting issue. In New South Wales, of course, the unvaccinated are treated the same as the vaccinated in about 2 weeks. But you're going to have trouble if things don't change getting back to Canberra next year and moving freely around the country. So thanks for joining us, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Good to be here.
Senator Alex Antic there in isolation. He's only got 13 days to go. He's there on principle, as you heard it, against mandatory vaccinations and people having to prove their vaccination status for interstate travel, for employment and such matters.